There's always kind of a sliding scale between the abstract, the imaginary, and the realistic. The reason I am drawn to work as an artist more and more comes back to, the simplest emotional qualities. Wood and stone both are places of affinity for me. I think that the work that defines us is often sort of compulsive on some level. I've always had this desire to, I've gotten in trouble for it, about carving things, and some things appropriately and some things not, But when I was a kid, I was always making things, and I always, I was whittling or making little toys or little miniature tools and things like that, and I loved shaping things. Often with a piece, there'll be a little flash, that kind of inspired little visionary moment where I'll see the piece what I want to create, and then that might take 30 seconds or something, or less. And then there's months of drudgery of trying to figure out how to capture that in form, the struggle with the medium, with the wood. There's a piece out front that I did in Rich Byers' studio that's a coyote in a rebozo, in a shawl, sweeping the street. This is kind of coyote sort of doing his community service for having been bad. I came to live in the valley in 1975. It's just over 40 years then I've been in the valley. Spending a month to 3 months in Mexico every year is an important part of our family tradition. The bronze sculpture out by the river now is the fish are dorados, mahi-mahi, and they were the main fish that were harvested by our neighbors who were fishermen in Mexico. When I was out sports fishing for them, when you pull them up out of the water, they're kind of a deep blue-green. As they come to the surface, they start to glow, and they glow with what seems like a light that comes from within them. And actually, they would knock them on the head to kill them, and that light would go out. I was exploring what is that light that things glow with? Especially, we don't think of an animal glowing like a bank of lights, but it does. And so I made up a myth, my own little myth, that they got that by feeding on stars at night. When I was in my 20s, I had the good fortune of living out on the Olympic coast, and I can't remember where I got a very clear idea that what I wanted most was to become a wood carver, but I was able to work with a Quinault Indian, David Forlines, and he agreed to teach me how they carved with traditional tools, the crooked knife and the adze, and I made both of those tools myself. At that time, there wasn't any place where you could buy them. They had always been traditionally handmade. Now you can purchase those. But so I made those tools, and then he agreed to teach me everything he knew about wood and especially cedar and how to carve it. But he kind of made me promise never to carve their stuff, Native American design. When I first came to the valley, it was actually a very brief but really important time in my life. I worked in trail crew in the Pasayten. I'd worked trail crew on the Olympic Peninsula, but coming here, I'm working with a Pulaski and a shovel, creating trails in the backcountry. Was a lot like carving, actually. Shovelful by shovelful, gouge stroke by gouge stroke. And I loved it. That sort of physical relationship, gardening and small-scale farming, which we did up Twist River, was another, working with my hands. It's kind of funny that I really don't care what I'm making as long as I get to use my hands, and whether it's planting potatoes or carving the face of some maiden. I just repainted or refurbished the Methow Valley News sign that I originally carved in 1981. It would be roughly 35 years or something, 30 years. It was interesting for me to look at my own work after that period of time, and both it was gratifying. I kind of had to congratulate myself on by hand carving the lettering deep in the cedar. It's able to withstand the weather, whereas paint will peel off. That carved lettering remains legible for a long time. So for the Meadow Valley Elementary School, when it was still up on the hill above Twisp and what was then Allen Elementary, I was asked to carve a sign for it, which I did. And reasons it had special meaning for me was I carved it out of a single slab, a 4-foot wide slab of cedar, 4 foot wide and 8 feet and 7 feet long, that had been cut by Ron McLean, who is both kind of a poet laureate, singer-songwriter, and teacher in the Methow. I felt fitting to use a piece of wood that he had cut over in Nia Bay and back in the 60s, for the piece. But then what I did was I created a cave, a sense of cubs looking out of a cave, their den, when they were meeting the world, when they were first looking out, which for me is kind of represents that moment in a child's life when they first enter into society in the lower grades of school. My favorite thing to do is to teach in the lower grades, and to watch them come alive with that experience of if I give them if I give them a little bit of instruction, mostly emotional support to take risks, painting and expressing what's inside of them. Witnessing that has an emotional impact that really kind of makes the carving experience pale by comparison, the actual sitting at the bench. But yet, after a while of that, sometimes I'll do months of teaching, and then I'm eager to get back to the bench and that much more private, more inward experience of my own work. But when I'm very conscious of kind of a legacy moment in my life now, and I feel like, as far as impact in the world, teaching kids, opening up art experience for them is the thing that kind of feeds my heart the most. Give me a gravel bar to wander on, on a rainy day, and I'm a happy camper. Just seeing what nature comes up with, the form, color, and texture of every rock, the pebbles and sticks and stones is, it's a sweet place,